that's the time
A
we
quick
have.
question. You said that you cannot stop migrants or immigrants from crossing countries. There is a large area, which is the Arab Peninsula, which is defiant to that rule because over decades, many people who ventured to try or tried to go there, they could not. Also, if you live in Kuwait or United Arab Emirates for 50 or 60 years, you are still just an expat, and your visa could be revoked any minute and checked out, even if your children are born there. Although this area is surrounded by three major wars: Iraq, Syria, and Yemen now. What is the policy regarding such restricted area? Especially it is a wealthy area, it's not a poor area.
Well, if you see the condition in which migrant workers find themselves, most migrant workers find themselves in those countries, you understand why most refugees and survival migrants don't want to go there. I've done a mission to Qatar. I've met with migrants in Qatar. I've done a report on Qatar. The situation of construction workers and domestic workers is pretty grim. It's not nice at all. The precariousness that we were talking about of the kafala system, the engineered precariousness of the kafala system makes for exploitative conditions. And that is difficult, and I've recommended Qatar to do away with the kafala system. So you understand that people who are fleeing war or fleeing sheer poverty in order to create for themselves and their children a future are not going to go to places where actually making a future will be almost as difficult. Most of the migrant workers who work on construction sites, for example, it takes them 2 to 3 years to repay the recruitment fees. If they come from Nepal or Sri Lanka or India, they will take 2 to 3 years working full-time to repay the recruitment fees before they can send any money to the family for actually, buying school books and putting bread on the table. And then they will live, and I've visited several workers' camps near Doha. They will live in atrocious conditions. That's not, and most of them are single because their families are back home. This is not how you create a future for your family.
Do you have an idea about the percentage of the Syrians coming to Europe from the total migration numbers?
In the percentage of Syrians in the migration movement towards Europe this year. Well, this year I haven't seen recent figures. 2014, I think the Syrians were 60%, if I'm not mistaken. And I think last figures I've seen were maybe July or August, and it was a bit less. It was 55% or something like that. Now, I don't know. I haven't checked the figures recently. There are also many Eritreans. The Afghanis, considering the situation in Afghanistan these days, there's a number of Afghanis that have joined, and so the numbers have grown. The number of Afghanis have grown. We've seen in recent weeks and months Palestinians, especially Palestinians who are in Lebanon, have been in Lebanon for quite a long time, joining also because they see opportunities, etc. And to me, this is a sign. There is a need for mobility. I expect that if peace is made in Syria, let's say within a year or two, not 10 years from now, but a year or two, peace comes back to Syria, and some kind of reasonable or reasonably functional government is put in place, I expect that a good number of Syrians in Europe will go back. Will go back because that's where their roots are, that's where their businesses were, and they will want to restart their business. And they are still in transition in Europe. If it happens 10 or 20 years from now, forget it. It'll be like the Palestinians in many places in the Middle East. They won't move from there. But like the Kosovars, like a few years back, almost 2 decades ago, or like the Bosnians in Germany, most of them went back because the time period was suitable and they had the choice between their integration in Germany, which was possible, although difficult, or going back and trying to create something anew in an environment they knew, even though war had changed it. And so, to me, that's mobility. They have the choice. That's what I want them to have. I want them to have the choice. But for that, you have to tell them, you're the one in charge. You decide. You decide to come from Ecuador if you want to. You decide to come from Syria if you want to. If you want to go back afterwards, you do that as well. And states are there to try to encourage maybe some people to stay. If we want engineers and doctors, that's a good thing. But we have to recognize that we also need construction workers and agricultural workers. And we don't recognize that. And we let that in the hands of mafias in many cases.
Maybe one word from